But our next Wangechi is in the studio. Grace Wangechi is the Executive Director of the Independent Medical Legal Unit. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Many people do not know what IMLU is, so you'll tell us what IMLU does, and then we'll look into today's story, which is who protects the protesters, and the work that you've done. There's a report that you launched yesterday, looking back into 1 year since the protests, and the call and push for accountability and so on and so forth. But our girl, Jano Wamakots, is going to welcome you with today's quote.
Good girl, bad girl.
Good girl. Today is good girl.
Today is good girl.
Kesho, different story.
This is so true. Thank you for that reminder. Hey. The quote was born from a phrase that came out of the NSAS protest in 2020. In Nigeria, and people were pushing back really much against what we're pushing back against now. And they said the system is not broken. It was built this way. Do you agree? The system was built this way. It's not that it's broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tend to agree, because what we see are systems and structures at times that are put in place with good intentions, but not completely. I don't think everybody understands what the structures provide for, and they also get out of the way. So it's a little contradicting, because yes, it's a system built not to break. Actually, it should be built not to break. But then who implements or who uses the system? It is the people. So the people break it.
Interesting. So in many ways, the system, because even I had to confront that quote. In a sense, when I saw it, I was just like, okay, it made me rethink.
Exactly.
I'm like, systems are not built intentionally to be broken. But then again, systems sometimes don't benefit a majority. Right. So even in their existence, are they broken?
They can be. Or no, they're working perfectly for their intended purpose. I think that's,
And their intended purpose may not be
service.
And
the way
who
we
uses
think of
the
it.
system? Who uses the system does not run itself. People use the system. So I think that's where the catch is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. It could be both ways.
It's a HR issue.
It's an HR issue. It could be both ways.
It could be a user issue, but also it could be a system design issue.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes.
So if, for example, it's this broad, but then at the end it's just a bottleneck, so it creates a bottleneck.
Right.
It's not the people who are creating a bottleneck.
Right.
It's
The system.
Yeah.
It's the bottle that's made that way.
Yeah.
So that, when you're doing that with a bottle, you're making it so that you don't spill and so on and so forth. But if it is meant to benefit, if it is meant to be a drum, if you put a bottleneck on a drum,
you're right.
Let's stop with the
You're
drum.
right. Yeah. It goes both ways. Yes, I agree. Yeah.
But Wangechi, thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah.
So what is IMLU, the Independent Medical Legal Unit?
Right. So the Independent Medical Legal Unit, IMLU, was born 33 years ago. Our founder is Dr. Lynn Kitui. Now, it's a human rights governance and health organization whose niche primarily is forensics documentation of torture, enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killings. So anything human rights violation, we are the people who document it through evidence-based processes that can be used both for justice and for accountability. IMLU, the word independent means that we are independent. We are an entity by ourselves. We are not affiliated to anybody or anything. Medical legal is our strength. We offer medical and legal services to survivors, to victims' families, to Kenyans who've gone through the hands of, who've been tortured or who've gone through pain and suffering caused by state agents that are supposed to be protecting the person. So essentially that is what we are. We have been in this space documenting every single case that happens, and we get to know about it. Obviously, there are many cases that we are not able to document. But the beauty with what we do is that what we give you is what there is. So we'll not put out a number there if we haven't verified it. And we don't just put numbers out there. For us, it's bigger than the numbers. This one person is a Kenyan who has lost a life or who's been disappeared, who's been tortured. So we work towards a prohibition, actually, of torture and related violations. So that is what we are. You can trust IMLU to be there when it matters. We have been in very many different spaces, at times not known about. We work with a range of professional networks of professionals, be it doctors, be it lawyers, be it pathologists, morticians. Morticians are a very big part of the work we do. They're the ones who tell us, oh, there's a body that has come in. The report we have, it's a road traffic accident, but by its presentation, it actually doesn't look like a road traffic accident. And we'll go in and we'll document. We work with monitors, human rights defenders. We work with journalists. We work with, name it, counselors. So we have the whole range of our services, and we really work around rehabilitation of survivors. We invest, we commit ourselves to work with survivors and victims' families. So essentially, that is what IMLU is.
Right. Really interested to hear how you've been able to support those families and silence but unbowed in just a bit. 33 years is a long time. Is there anything that's pushed the organization or forced the organization to evolve based on something that happened or a certain season since your inception?
I think we keep evolving. We keep evolving based on the trends and the patterns of torture that we are seeing. So, for example, when we started off, our founder, most of the survivors then would be, prisoners of politically, persons who've been disappeared or arrested because of their political affiliations. And they would be put in Nyayo chambers and tortured. But so we would offer services to them while in detention most of the times. Nowadays, the trend has changed. We get to meet the survivors or even to know about the survivors when they have been disappeared, but they are not most likely going to be in a detention facility. That's a very big difference.
Right.
We have a lot of death while in custody. We have a lot of arrested persons. But we know that a lot of the torture that is happening today is out of those confined spaces. So we're actually seeing that torture is actually being masked in its own way. It's being done in broad daylight when you don't expect it to be done. It's being done, in public when everybody's watching. And I think there's a communication that's being passed around that you can't touch us. There's nothing you can do, So there's a bit of a difference. The numbers are consistent. It's high, There are lots of people who go through torture and who are suffering. But how it's being done, the surveillance, for example, now through use of technology and partnering with private sector service providers to locate influencers, innocent Kenyans, that's a big shift. Because these days it's not a politically affiliated person. It's really you and I. It's actually you and I, Yes. Yeah.
By and large, what you're saying is we've heard it twice before in the last week from two former political detainees, Wafula Buke and Gitobo Manyara. And they said the exact same thing, that we were detained. We knew. By the time Gitobo, by the time Wafula, they knew, and they had conversations of, if we continue down this road, this is what's going to happen, because we are a threat to this administration. But now this is an administration that is going after the future, going after civilians who represent no real political threat, by and large. So it is very, very worrying. Do you have statistics that perhaps give us an insight into what's happened over the last few years from your numbers and what you have verified?
Right.
Because it can be easy to. I don't want to take away from individual experiences, but yes, we'd also like to hear from your verification.
Yeah. So in 2023, when we had the protests as a result of the push for the cost of living, we documented 67 extrajudicial executions. And it's really important that we call these things exactly what they are. These are executions. They are not just killings. They are executions. So we reported 67 executions. This year we've reported 63. We reported 63 enforced disappearances as IMLU, and there's an issue in terms of the numbers. I did mention that we verify. We have our own tools based on international standards. But that doesn't mean that the reports that we've had in the past are not the exact numbers. We did report the country, the sector, Kenya National Commission on Human Rights reported 89. So we are working largely with the number of 89. We've reported over 600
for which year? For 2024?
For 2024. For 2024. And as we speak today, we are reporting 42 this morning as I was coming here. The update I have now is we have 42 executions, people who have been killed in the hands of our security.
This year alone?
This year,
in
and we are in
2025
June,
alone.
in 2025. And we are in June. So you can see that the trends are really, really worrying. And as I said, one life to lose is too many lives. It's a life. It's just too much. You imagine the pain these families are going through. You imagine the fear you've just mentioned. The fear that you wake up. When we were launching this report yesterday, one of the survivors spoke and said, it's so unfortunate that when I wake up, I don't know that I'm going back home. I mean, it's so sad. We don't need to get to that level of fear and anxiety. And why? Just because you spoke your mind out, you know? Just because you called out an ill. Just because you called out a violation. Just because you stood for something that should not be happening and you said it cannot happen anymore.
And it's reinforced.
Exactly.
These were very inflammatory statements.
Yes.
But yeah, I think later I'd also want to understand how then are you able to, I guess because the work is, medical legal, where does holding to account people who make such inflammatory statements, is it at all part of what you deal with? Because again, it flames the fire.
Exactly.
It fans the flame.
Yes.
So somebody speaks for their rights, then you have somebody who has a position saying you'll catch a stray. Yeah.
And can you imagine now, that's really sad. You've seen the kind of remarks that have been made, and this person will walk scot-free.
Yeah.
Nobody will bother. There has been I haven't heard of anybody calling him out from the government. But a young person simply says, we will go to the streets to say that we cannot take this anymore. And they're put in. They're arrested arbitrarily. They actually put in a police cell but not charged. Or they are tortured. Look at Albert's tortured. Why? Because he's associated with a comment that was detailing corruption issues. He's associated. It's not even, they don't even have the evidence at that point that actually he's the one who did it. So, and even if he was the one who had done it, you're actually stating, and you're sharing an issue, that needs to be investigated.
And if you consider it defamatory, there's legal processes.
There are legal processes, right. So, but here is a leader who people listen to, who has an audience, who has a platform, who has a following, who is supposed to be a role model. And he says things that, I don't even want to believe what I heard, Yeah. So it's unfortunate that our leaders are not held to account. And Janet, yes, we actually do a lot of advocacy. We actually have programs that ensure accountability. IMLU convenes the Police Reforms Working Group that brings together now 27 organizations working in the space of governance, democracy, human rights. And part of what we do is call out accountability especially for National Police Service and the whole policing. So the question is, why hasn't this gentleman and the others that have been mentioned already been arrested and should be undergoing investigations?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
There's several cogs in this wheel of injustice, and I want. Sometimes people feel like they're being gaslit when they thread and they, pick a few things apart. But you've spoken to the people that do help with your investigations. What are those either individual or private sector actors? And I'm not asking to name them by name, but those people who do play into it, who feed into the torture and injustices, whether it's the person who does accept to book a body with bullet wounds as a traffic accident, whether it's someone providing location information, things like that. Yeah.
So there are a couple of things. The first thing is awareness. So for a long time, it's been assumed that when a body comes in, you book it. At times, they're not correctly booked, and you just write whatever you're told. But the more we have engaged with morticians, the more we've had open discussions, the more we have trained them. They now know how to identify a body that comes in suspicious, circumstances, and they assess. And they call us. They actually will send out an alert. A lot of times, they don't do that openly and through the official channels because they're also afraid of retaliation and all this. Yes. But it tells you one thing: the Kenyans are very alert to the injustices that are happening. Kenyans want to create change. Kenyans want to be part of the solution. And the time for command, instructions and doing what you've been told, actually coming to an end very, very soon. And I'll be talking about command responsibility. But if a mortician can actually see this body and say, no, something is wrong, and they call, it tells you that there's a change in mindset, a change in wanting to do that which is right. Now, what worries us is these rogue police officers who actually commit the atrocities themselves. It's not like they don't know. It's not like they haven't been trained. It's not. Actually, our training in Kenya is very, very comprehensive. And a lot of them know what to do. And just yesterday, somebody in the meeting we had did ask, do you have to be told that shooting somebody in the head is wrong? Do you have to be told? Do you have to be told that opening a cell door and letting in other inmates to come and beat up somebody is wrong? That's not the cause of justice. That's not how things should work. And so there's increased awareness, there's increased responsibility for change within individuals. And I think what the government needs to realize is that the more you push people to a corner, the more they resist and they push back. The more they become alert, and the more they gain the confidence to call it out. Right now, it's not about Gen Zs. It's not about just the young persons. It's everybody in Kenya who's saying, you can't do this. Yeah. You cannot continue getting away with it. So I think the people we work with, the professionals, and let me give another example. The medics, for example, they set up shop last week during the protest, putting themselves out there after what they went through last year when they were attacked, and they said, we have a responsibility.
Sorry. For context, for those who don't remember, the Medics for Kenya camp was tear-gassed actively with patients, everyone, people clearly identifying themselves in Red Cross jackets, in everything, and then tear gas right in there.
Exactly. Thank you for So, and you ask them, why then would you want to go back there? Because last week they went back, and we supported supplying drugs and medicine because we have to take care of Kenyans. And they said, this is a Kenyan. My duty as a medic is to provide services where they are required. I don't choose. It would be so painful for somebody to die as a result of lack of first aid and immediate medical attention because there was nobody to respond. Yet we have medics. So they have put themselves out there, and they have said, if you have any injuries, if they are, somebody gets into a medical condition, please come. They have pitched tent at Jamia Mosque. So you can see that Kenyans are putting themselves out there, really just putting themselves out there. We work with monitors, as I mentioned. The monitors took people from the streets all the way to Kenyatta National Hospital and watched and called us, and they said, we have X number of people. So the system is working. It's not about Gen Zs, it's not about just one person. Kenyans are going out to make sure that their country is safe. Yes.
I want to look back at the numbers.
Yeah.
So since January 1st this year to this morning, IMLU has found that 42 people have died in the hands of the police. What does that exactly mean? Does it mean that they had been arrested and then they died? Does it mean that they were killed even in the process of arrests? Does it mean that some of them were caught in an act of committing a crime and police can say there was justifiable use of force and so on and so forth?
So it's a mix of different things. You have the Wangechi case, the guy who was shot. We have a guy who was shot in Dome last week. So there are different cases. We have 6 who've died in custody, in detention. So police, just exactly as Albert's case, somebody is arrested on whatever basis, and the next day or a couple of days later, they are found dead while in custody.
While in a cell.
While in a cell, while in detention. You know, so the question is, and even assuming, because we've had this a lot, that somebody died because, he was resisting arrest.
Police were returning fire.
Or police were returning fire. He's suspected to have been in this group that robbed XYZ place. I think the standing orders are clear on how you should manage situations. The issue of use of live ammunition is very worrying. Why is it that the first thing you do is use live ammunition? Why? In the case of, or even beating to death, you can imagine Albert's death, just to give you a good picture, because I witnessed the autopsy. Albert was beaten so badly. It took hours. It must have taken hours. He was screaming. People have confirmed they had him scream. And I'm really sorry that I'm putting this out. But it's just a question of, have we lost humanity? Why would people do that? So it's not about the police were in danger or they were defending themselves. No. A lot of them, it's just reckless use of power, reckless use of the weapons that are in their hands that are supposed to be for the protection of Kenyans and not for killing and destroying lives. So we continue to monitor, but we are very disturbed by this trend. And these are just deaths we are talking about. We have many more that have been maimed, people that were disappeared, are nursing injuries. There are all sorts of things that we are dealing with.
So yesterday you released this report that is looking at police and how policing has worked since the Gen Z protests up to now. And that's why you have all these numbers. You've shown the number of people who died, those that were abducted, those that were arrested arbitrarily and then released, and so on and so forth. But there's somewhere where you talk about the question of command responsibility.
Right.
Let's define command responsibility. What is it and how far up the chain of command are we talking about?
So this is, I think, one of the biggest issues we have in Kenya. Once we get it right on command responsibility, it will be a good step in the right, it will be a good mark in moving things forth. So command responsibility simply means that the person issuing instructions takes responsibility for the instructions they issue. Now, the way the police work is that you don't just wake up and go on patrol. You don't just wake up and go on this and this assignment. They're actually assigned duties, and they're told, you're placed in this team, you'll be doing this, you'll be patrolling, you're in charge of whatever area. The person that issues the instructions, especially during public order management, that is when we have protests and all these gatherings, is a person that first and foremost must be held to account. Then there's what we call individual responsibility. Again, the person issuing the instructions must be held to account as an individual, that I issued these instructions, whether as IG or DIG or the person commanding a police station. So there are two things, in your individual capacity and as the command person, the person issuing. Then there's a person who's taking the instructions, the police officer on the ground. They must, and we are saying, please don't forget that one day you'll be out of the police force, because right now you're being covered by the fact that you're in there. But someday you're going to go out, whether by retirement or by termination or whatever, you'll be out there. Individual responsibility will follow you, because as a police officer, you received an instruction, shoot at will. I'm assuming, because I don't see what else they say when people go out and shoot. If you shoot and you kill somebody, then you'll be held to account as an individual.
Personally.
Personally. And that's where we have a big issue, because now there's a lot of gameplay here. Command officers, covering for the persons. They don't want to release the names of who was in the command, but there are ways to gather information. And the individuals not detailing where the command came from. But let me say this also. We are aware that we may not be having one command line. And that's the most difficult thing about this.
How so? So let's go into our police structure.
Yes.
How we know it? What are the other things that we talk about?
Yes.
There is one police station.
Yes.
Okay? In that one police station, there will be officers from the National Police and the Administration Police.
Yes.
True?
Yes.
Who's the boss?
The police officer commanding station.
OCS.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
One.
Yes, one.
Whether he's from AP or from
Yes.
Kenya Police.
Yes.
Above them, there is the
OCPD.
commanding a division.
Division, yes.
Above them is?
Deputies. Regional commanders.
The regional
first.
commander.
The regional commanders,
Okay.
yes.
So in the case where there is police are responding, let's say there's an issue on Kimathi Street and police are responding, those police will be deployed from Central Police Station by the OCS. True?
Yes.
So if the police come here and something untoward happens, unlawful happens, command responsibility lies with?
Him, the OCS.
With the OCS?
Yes.
Does it go beyond the OCS?
It should, but just a minute before we go on that with that conversation. When the military was deployed, were they deployed by the OCS?
No.
He doesn't have that power.
Commander-in-Chief.
So it is not one line of command, and that's what I'm insisting on. It is not.
But before we start mixing it with other entities have entered the fray.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because even when the police are deployed, they are deployed to serve under the police.
Right.
When they're deployed internally, the Gazette notice is clear. They're assisting the national
I mean, when the military is deployed.
Yes, the military, right? So in this particular case where there are
there's no one
only
else.
police.
Yes.
And there's an OCS.
Yes.
Do we say that the command responsibility goes beyond the OCS to the OCPD to the regional commissioner?
Of course.
Why so?
Of course it should, because there's a structure that runs in government. Today, if something goes wrong in IMLU, the buck stops with me. It doesn't matter. The buck stops with me. Then I can't deal internally with my team, but the buck stops with me. Because we have systems, we have structures, we have processes. There's a way things are supposed to be done. If they fall out of that structure, I will ask the team, why did you do this? Or, you fell out of this, the confinement of our system, right?
Yeah.
It's the same with the police. It's the same. So the buck should actually always stop with the IG.
Right.
Always.
Eric, a little bit to your question, you said even when the military is deployed internally, still within the structure of the police and within that command, 100% true on paper. I don't know much, but I find it difficult to think that members of the armed forces would be under the command of the police. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just...
The power doesn't want that.
We have an example that's going on in the country right now.
Yes.
In the north, the military is in operation. The military is in operation in the north and assisting the national police in maintaining law and order. Okay? Now, this question has been posed to the Minister for Defense, who signed the Gazette release. And it's clear that they are acting under the command of the national police. Right?
On paper.
The person who deploys and says, okay, today the operation is we're heading this way, is the officer running that operation.
True.
You're saying that's what it should be.
That's from then a command responsibility perspective, still goes back to either an OCS, an OCPD,
The officer in charge of that operation.
Okay.
There must be somebody up.
On paper.
Yeah.
On paper.
We'll
But
use paper to go to court.
Remember, the word is assisting. You are assisting. But this is not your command line. You don't report to the police if you're military. You don't. You have your own reporting structure. And that's where the confusion and the gameplay comes in. Now, when we start investigating, and this happened in 2007-08, there were questions of, we do not know, including the Kenya wildlife people that were brought in. I had this number of people, but I'm not their commanding officer. So we need to now work together as commanders to determine what happened.
Yep.
On paper, it's one thing, yeah, that so and so you assisting the police, so you're under that structure. But remember, they do not report to them in any way. They actually have their own very different reporting structures.
Is that the law?
The law says that you can be deployed, okay?
Yeah.
In situations of when there's need, you can be deployed.
Yeah.
But it's never been clarified. However, using the same law, it means that that command officer, whoever issued, should be held to account because he should deal with the other commanders and the other command chain.
That's my point.
I agree with you on that.
So you're
but
saying
I'm
it's
telling
not being
you,
done, or you're trying to differentiate?
I'm just saying.
He's saying if we were to hold anyone
we were to
accountable,
hold-
Yes.
we still use the same structure.
yes, in holding to account, yes. But I'm telling you, the games that will come is, these are not my team.
Yeah.
These, there's so many issues that come in, and camouflage the whole thing that you actually cannot get a hold of Officer XYZ from the military, from Kenya Wildlife, from Kenya Forestry. And what we are saying is, when you when you deploy people, hand over everything to the commanding officer. And so the buck will still stop with the IG, and that is what I have said. At the end of the day, the Inspector General of Police is responsible for all the issues around managing protests, managing anyone managing all the police units or whoever is facilitating or managing protests.
National security or...
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm being pedantic about this. But you see, police operate with the standing orders,
Yes.
which is legally gazetted.
Yes.
And there's the law. When, for example, we see that there are protests in Nairobi, and police officers from outside of Nairobi County are brought in, right? So Nairobi County operates as the region as well.
Yes.
Can you?
Yes, it's a region.
So
yes.
there are police who may come from Gong, which is in Kajiado, and others who may come from Machakos, which is in Eastern region, whatever region, and so on and so forth. And others may come from Kiambu, which is Central region, come into Nairobi.
Yeah.
Are they formally handed over to one officer who's running the operation in Nairobi, CBD?
By law, they're supposed to be handed over.
I would assume so.
By law, they have to be handed over because they're going to come and be assigned duties and stations or work areas. So by law, that is what is supposed to happen. Whether it happens, that's something we have to assess and determine.
So as IMLU, as you're investigating all this, and you're looking at police successes, do you go further into that and checking? So how many officers were deployed in Nairobi on that day? How many were from Central Police Station? How many were from outside of there? What division is this?
Starehe.
This is Starehe Division. How many were outside Starehe Police Division? How many were outside of Nairobi Region? And who was the commanding officer? Do you have documentation from what you've seen investigating this?
We have tried, and it's been difficult, I must admit. It's been very difficult. We've even tried to ascertain who had what ammunition. Was it, the one that killed so-and-so, was it from a deployed unit, or was it from resident unit? We've tried all that, but we get a lot of roadblocks. Remember, we are a civil society organization, so we don't have the legal stature to go and, get
subpoena and ask.
Exactly, exactly. But I think that is where we are going, and we are determined. When we say command responsibility, these are the processes that will make us literally get people who are issuing the instructions on the stand and get the individuals who received instructions and committed the atrocities. So that is in the works. We are determined. It has to be done.
I think what I am happy to see in the weeks leading up to now tomorrow is that there's officers on the stand for their individual actions, and they're taking that responsibility.
Yes.
And that the chain, there's still pressure, whether it's for DIG Lagat, whether it's for the OCS Talam, whether it is for the Inspector General himself. So that, I'm hoping, is sending a message, like you said, a reminder that your actions, you will be held accountable for them as an individual. And then as a commanding officer, you have command responsibility. So then that's to the entire police force, that what you do, regardless of who ordered you to do it, whether it was lawful, unlawful, you will be held accountable.
Yeah.
You who is giving orders, even if you are not giving orders, the officer under your command are still your responsibility.
Absolutely. And remember, it doesn't matter when we may come, the system will come after you, even after you're out of that office. So just remember, whatever you're doing, it is not limited to the time of your service. It is not limited. So I think people need to be conscious, really conscious, that the system will come after you, even after you've left the service.
Yeah, it should.
It has to.
It has to.
It has to.
I'm wondering if you have any, I don't know, call it success story, but any example of something over the last decade or so from IMLU that has been able to show, yeah, these things can happen, a breakthrough, whether it's in police success force or disappearance, etc. Just a success story that is able to show us, you know what, if we're able to follow this way, then we can have the outcome that we need.
Now, our success stories are not, I don't call them real success stories the way we would want them, because what they demonstrate is sacrificial lambs. We get junior officers who have been, arraigned in court and convicted in some cases. But the two most interesting cases is the case that is in court right now, Rashid. And I'll not give a lot of details, but there's a person who was arraigned in court for the killing of a couple of young people in Eastlands. That case has been going on. We thought that it would have been, determined by now.
Because it's one that people are very familiar with.
People are familiar with,
And it seems cut and dry.
Exactly, but it isn't. And there are lots of, tactics being used by all the different actors. The baby Pendo case in Kisumu. We did think that this case was taking a good shape. Initially, there are 11 police officers, I think, who were to take plea. What we have seen now is all the senior names officers have been dropped. Who do we have remaining in that case?
Your sacrificial lamb.
Exactly. So, but it's gonna catch up with them. It's gonna catch up with the system.
Maybe our version of civic education to police and to goons and to anyone who is either used by the state more. Our version of civic education could be drawing case studies of, again, how people who are weaponized by the state are abandoned. There's like very few ways it ends. It is either you end up dead in jail or extracized from your community. And that's the last one is best case scenario. And that if we can push that message to them with case studies, because there are enough of them. I don't know. I don't know if it would help.
Spot on.
Yeah,
there is no
Hopefully
other way it ends. There is no other way it ends. And you can see even with this Albert's case, they've started throwing each other under the bus. And soon, even if the senior officers get away from this one, because it's a very high likelihood, very, very high likelihood, because they say the law is a law, and things, it depends on how the case will be argued, the kind of evidence that is put forward, the who did what. You can already see who's being put to blame. It is the inmates, those that were,
Right.
So, but at the end of the day, it never ends well for them. It will not end well for them. So Kenyans need to know, stop being used by these politicians, stop being assigned, injustice matters and you putting your hand on somebody else. It will come. It will catch up with you.
One day.
One day.
Wangechi, have you, as IMLU, as you're doing all this work, of course, of investigating, have you ever had a conversation with police officers and they've told you the circumstances under which they work, under which they take orders, under which one, what do they say? Are they happily taking all orders, or are they also at some point like pushing back against those orders? And do they have case studies themselves of people who did not take orders and what happened to them?
Yeah. So it's very interesting. When we speak to police officers at an individual level, like I meet a lot of them, you know, in the course of my work, and they'll say, Wangechi, keep going, keep raising these issues. We are behind you. You're speaking on our behalf. And they will say, I also have children. I know what they are going through. We have tried to raise matters. We don't have the voice. We don't have the space. So please keep going. They give us tips. You know, this and this is what is happening. Even in Albert's case, there were tips that were coming in, not to us directly, maybe sometimes through other persons that we are very closely associated with. And they will say, I know that I cannot, I don't have the power to say no. But we're actually telling them, yes, you do. Yes, you do, because you know what is right, you know what is wrong. So the fear
Do you ask them why?
Yeah.
Do you ask them why they think they don't have the power?
Yes, it's because of, they say, the fear that is within the system of you being transferred and put to, you know, at the locations that are
in the line of fire.
In the line of fire, you know, very bad working terms and conditions. So we've just created a culture of fear, like we are doing right now with Kenyans. A culture of fear that you cannot speak out on matters, the bureaucracy within the system, yet we actually, as Police Reforms Working Group, really push for the betterment of the welfare of the police officers, for their mental well-being, for their recognition, promotion, recruitment. But these are things that they cannot speak about. When they speak about them, there's a lot of retaliation. Just like, I mean, it's so easy to know what is happening with the police system. If Albert, and I'm going back to that case because it really resonates with Kenyans, if Albert was arrested on the suspicion that he's involved with others in promoting a case that states that so-and-so is corrupt, that so-and-so receives XYZ, assumptions, and he was arrested, and he was taught to mfundishe, you know, let's teach him a lesson. He ended up dead. What about a police officer who speaks out against the system?
They die. They are shot by, you know, in thugs in the in the course of their duty and so on and so forth. So, are there police officers who you've spoken to, or cases that you've heard from fellow police officers who tried to say no, who tried to stand against illegal orders?
We have spoken to people who said during the protests, they have actually stated we shouldn't, especially last year. They actually said, these are children, these are young people. We cannot open fire on them. They were told they are not the commanding officers. They were told yours is to follow the law. And it was, the order, sorry. And it was as simple as that. It was as simple as that. I've spoken to people, including some senior level, middle senior level, you know, persons. And they say, we do not completely agree with what happened. We do not support what happened. But there's nothing out of done.
What about silent, either complacency, you know, you can have the order, but to execute it is a whole other thing, right?
True.
You could be on the streets and do your job by and large, which is to keep protesters safe. And at the beginning of these protests, we saw a lot of that. People would come and angukana in front of a police, and he's just there like, okay. And we keep it moving. And then there was an escalation that happened somewhere in the middle.
Infiltration. Remember, it's not actually the regular police, honestly. It's not necessarily the regular police who used live ammunition and all that. If you followed, you know, the documentary that was there, you could see these are people who are brought in from other units. And that is a sad thing. And that's why they come in masked and with, you know, you can't tell who's who. No identity badges, no, you know, you can't tell. So they come in, they look like the regular police, and they do their thing. And then someone else is looking at just what happened. Why? you know, and they're asking those questions themselves. By the way, we have some very good officers who are deeply troubled, deeply disturbed.
Yeah.
And they're wondering, how do we, and one of them actually, very recently, the day we were doing the autopsy for Albert, you know, said, you know, we are amongst the teams that can never go on a protest. But at times we feel like we could actually just call it out, you know, but we can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not in
So,
that position.
yeah.
How do you're in the police reform
Working group.
working group?
Yeah.
How does that working group support such officers? Such officers who are voiceless, such officers who want to do things the right way, but they just know there's so much repercussion for it.
Yeah.
They go back home, they look at their children and they're like, tomorrow I start defying orders and these children will bury me.
Yeah.
How do you support them?
So a couple of ways. One is like last Monday, we did issue a detailed guideline of how to manage protests when they come in, just to remind them, just to make sure that everybody knows what is supposed to be done so that there's no excuse. We are part of the team that put in very strong recommendations on, you know, policing around their welfare, about care for officers, about mental health programs. As IMLU, we engage with the police very regularly, and we even have, you know, training programs just to help refresh a couple of things. We are not able to do as much as we could even as a police reforms working group because we don't have that kind of resource or capacity.
Right.
But ours is to make sure that we document, we make the right recommendations, we engage, and we've engaged at different levels, including with the ideal, you know, this current one, not and the
so
previous one, not so much. We are yet to do that. But we have programs where we engage them and tell them, we need to treat our officers right, including just their day-to-day, you know, their salaries, their welfare, their housing, you know, their benefits, how you treat them, how you recruit. You know, there's a lot of corruption, by the way, in the recruitment. It's so difficult to get a promotion. So these are things we've raised, you know.
We have just about like 30, just a minute or less before we close. I want to get your parting shot. But I think even as we leave here, I think police reforms should become a matter of national importance, because I don't think anyone that weaponizes the police wants any actual reform. It is easier to control them when they're underpaid, undervalued, stressed, trained, you know, in very dehumanizing manners and all of that. But what is your parting shot as we go into tomorrow for citizens and for the police service and for good and bad actors all across?
My parting shot to all Kenyans and to the police service. This is our country. We have a duty to protect. We have a duty to ensure that there's peace in this country and that there's no violence. But we also have a duty to ensure that the Constitution, we safeguard the Constitution. So the right to voice, the right to picket is enshrined in our Constitution. Let us safeguard our Constitution. Please, 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 I want to beg police officers, do not take command responsibility without thinking through your actions. You know what is right, you know what is wrong. Please do what is right. It is important.
Right. You want to look at one or two comments?
Yes, as we close. This is beyond that. We should remember the bottom-up economic transformative agenda that the current administration proposed during the last general elections and work towards implementing it. Those are things that we don't even say bottom-up anymore. They've just become, you know. But let's start by asking the following questions. What is the law? How is the government structured? How should we participate and coordinate and work with government? That is very true. I see Edie Hassan saying police services need reforms. Every year they need a mental checkup. I do agree. You've spoken to some of the recommendations you've made. Lusigi says, you want discipline in Kenya to reach Japanese levels? Start by honesty. How did you acquire your wealth? Are you in employment due to nepotism? Are your child's grades due to to merit or exam cheating?
Yep.
Start asking those
Literally.
questions.
Starts with
Exactly.
self-audit. Thank you. I love the name of the report, Silenced but Unbowed. It's not even just the name of a report. I feel like it's a message.
Yes, it
so,
is.
thank you. Very quickly, Your World is coming up next. Attachment styles and traumatic responses. This is round 3 of this conversation. I hope you guys are invested and are learning. So Winnie and Mikali will be coming up in just a moment with Your World. But for now, thank you so much for that. And all the best to all of us tomorrow.
Thank you.
And to Kenyans
You want to give
everywhere.
briefly what you're doing tomorrow?
Yes, tomorrow we are commemorating 1 year, obviously, since the Reject Finance Bill protest. We will be having kind of mic kwa ground, a baraza, if you will. We'll have survivors, we'll have parents of those who died, of victims. We'll have legal minds as well. We'll have people of faith, musicians, some of those who were able to coin songs that spoke to a moment. And we are going to be in conversation with all of them. We'll also have the LSK president, Faith Odhiambo, starting off the day with us. So please join us and join Kenyans around the country as we just hold space and peace for a country that is absolutely beautiful and doesn't deserve the injustices that we've been seeing. So that will be happening tomorrow. We'll give you more information on our digital platforms and tomorrow morning as well. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Great.